and I am here with Highly Critical after an embarrassing start to the show. So, hello. How are you doing today? Are you having a better day than I am with my show?
I'm doing all right. Um, I am probably my day is probably on par with the way the show is started
Oh
because it's just
no.
been one thing after another.
Great. Yeah, I can feel that. Um, well, I hope that at least for the next like 60 minutes, we can have a nice chill time and just chat, which would be lovely. Because I always like talking with you, and I've wanted to do another hangout for ages, but our schedules have been a bit off. So it hasn't quite worked, or I was sick, but we're back, and we kind of were thinking about topics to talk about. And one that we had talked about was just like the use of misogyny in hip hop, but I think just generally. But honestly, I want to talk to you about anything you want to talk about. So more like, yeah, get your thoughts on how things are going with Trump as well, if you want to talk about. So we can start with misogyny, because that's kind of what we discussed, misogynistic language. And within hip hop, but I just think in the culture generally, I don't want to single out hip hop as if it's the problem. It's just used a lot in there because it is so lyrical and people use so many words. I think yeah, it's part of that musical style more so than, Barry Manilow. But more, so if you want to start with that and then move on to other topics, I'm just saying it's not a fixed conversation.
Yeah, sure. Um, so
You'd
let's
actually
see.
done a video on this a while ago, I think. I remember listening to you talk about the word bitch and reclaiming it, but I think it was just maybe more generally. Do you even remember making that video?
That may have been a point that I made in my N-word video.
Ah, okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I would say I think I read from Bell Hooks where she said that misogyny is the most pervasive form of bigotry. And it's not because it's worse than other forms. It's just because, like, with race, people tend to group up by their racial community. And, with I guess homophobia or even transphobia to a certain extent, you can't necessarily look at someone and tell whether or not they're gay or whether or not they're trans. But with misogyny, like men and women typically, both are present within a family and community environment. So misogyny is just always present for women and for women presenting people. And at first, when I read that from Bell Hooks, I was like, there's no way that could be true. But I mean, the more and more I navigate through the world, I'm constantly met with misogyny. And I'm glad you made that point about how misogyny is present like everywhere and not just specifically hip hop, because I don't want, like certain racists to be like, aha, I told you
Yep.
hip hop is like the devil's music.
Right,
But I
exactly.
mean, it's true. Like, honestly, being in the Black community, it's very patriarchal. My opinion is that that has to do more with Christianity
Yeah,
than
that would I
anything.
say. Yeah, religions are at the core of
Yeah,
that, not communities. Yeah.
yeah. But then I mean, like, and of course there's going to be misogyny present there, and hip hop is just one of the ways that it comes out. One thing I would like to say is, like, I try not to take lyrics literally. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
a lot of it is metaphorical, or just using analogies, or they're using certain words because it just fits the rhyme scheme. But there are certain other lyrics that's like, okay, but why did you need to put that in there?
Mm-hmm.
And I think one famous lyric that caused outrage a few years ago, it's the song "U-E-N-O It." I think it's by Rick Ross, and it's like a collaboration with a bunch of other rappers. But Rick Ross put in the line like, I put Molly all in her champagne. She didn't even know it. I took her home and I enjoyed that. She didn't even know
Whoa.
it.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it's like, dude,
Whoa.
how can you
Yeah.
put that in a rap song that you're drugging and raping women?
Yeah. I mean, if you're like playing the character of a baddie, like you're telling a story, I could see where that could maybe come into it if there's consequences later for that behavior, but kind of just putting it in there as a thing that's done. I think, yeah, that's another thing too. I mean, I don't think I'm going to bring anything original to this conversation in terms of the use of misogyny in misogynistic terms, but I do think that, yeah, the bell hooks point that because we find men and women, in a pretty equal distribution, and then non-binary people and trans people too. But you get a distribution. All cultures are, well, there are very, very few matriarchal cultures, and they tend to be tribal ones, and far removed from things like patriarchal monotheistic religions. They've not been exposed to those kinds of ideas, and they have completely different frameworks for thinking about even family than people the way we do in the West. I did have a point with this. Oh yes, and so whether it's in the white community, the black community, the Hispanic community, in Europe, in South America, if you have machismo and you have that patriarchy, then you're right. Other forms of discrimination tend to it does cross cut in ways that homophobia doesn't, or transphobia, or even racism, because you can have the patriarchal views. White supremacy is very patriarchal in its view of women as basically birthers of the next white race. That's their main job, is to carry the babies of the white men and raise a future white supremacist, in their worldview. So women have to have that experience, and there's problems even in the progressive community with people who think that it's completely fine to say, tell a woman, oh, I want to, let me suck your dick, or something like that. A woman that you don't know. Sorry, I'm making an Jake, Papa Jake, said that to me in an exchange that we were having about something else completely, in order to pull a sort of sexual move, like his men's power, by bringing up penises, and kind of putting me in my place and bringing up sex. In supposedly progressive spaces.
Yeah, I mean, sorry to interrupt your train of thought, but I followed that situation, and it's just like, I just want to be clear. Telling somebody to suck your dick in a joking way is not the issue here. Like, if somebody I knew personally, like a friend or even like a partner, or just someone I knew, said it to me, then I would know the intention. I would know where they're coming from. I can take it as a joke. But even with how you and me interact online, like, we're cool, but I wouldn't necessarily say like we're close. So even with you and me, I wouldn't say something out of pocket like that. And for Jake to say that to you, and I think he also said something similar to Chrisiosity, and he thinks like, oh, well, I didn't mean it that way, so you can't take it that way. It's like, that's not how language works.
Precisely. I said it as a joke. Well, I don't know. Like you said, I don't know him, and I didn't take it as a joke. So if he meant it as a joke and it didn't land as a joke, that's not my fault. That's his fault for saying something and not making it clear it was a joke. So it was, the onus on it was on him, not for me to assume his mind and then forgive him for the offense he caused me because I was in the wrong because I didn't read his mind. That's just like, such a privileged position to take. Like, you have to assume my best intentions, and then when I offend you, you should feel wrong that you were offended by me. You should pre-correct that and give me that benefit of the doubt. No, that's not how it works. It was an aggressive comment, and it was taken as such.
Yeah. And it's weird how he's not even able to see how it's inappropriate. Like, if y'all were in like an office space and he said that, he would go to HR.
If he was in a bar and like we were talking and he said that and I took offense, people would like, why are you being such a jerk?
Yeah. But I really feel like, it's his platform. People like him personally, so they're going to support him.
Can we talk about, sorry, I shouldn't have put something in my mouth and then gone live on air. But talk about pre-forgiving people. Sorry to take this on a left turn, but I am currently shocked at the number of people in my comments who, when I show them shoe on heads, racist comments about teaching Black people not to steal seminar at 3 p.m. or that Black Lives Matter is a Black supremacist group, or that she made an anti-Hillary ad with Lauren Southern, a Canadian white nationalist. And they're like, well, I'll just assume she doesn't hold those views now. And I'm just thinking, I get it why people of color don't trust white liberals and white progressives. Because when it comes to racism, there are way too many white people who are willing to just go, she probably doesn't think that anymore. And I'm like, wait a minute, she's never apologized on her main channel for this. She's never owned it. She's never retracted it. And so does racism just mean so little to you that you're going to brush it off? Like, you're white, right? Seriously?
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed with, groups in power, like men or, white people collectively, I notice that they get the benefit of the doubt that the oppressed
Mm-hmm.
groups don't
Yeah.
ever get. If a man, like we were talking about with Jake, if he says something, out of pocket or
Yeah.
offensive, people want to give him that benefit. Same thing with white people and with June being white, talking about race. They want to give her that benefit of the doubt that if I were to say anything like, um, white people have a fucked up history in America, there are going to be people who attack me and take it at the very worst possible value.
Yeah. And I find that you're right. It's a whole, I like this person. It's not about
Yeah.
the principles.
Yeah.
And actually, if they really liked that person and wanted them to be the person they thought they would hold them to account. And I want to tell you, when I had the exchange with Jake, and I made a biology book comment in the middle of him, like talking about sucking my dick and why that was, why that was not a joke to me in any way. He went over to Vosh's channel and they dragged me over that for hours. And I immediately made an apology at the start of the happy hour. It was extended. And I did not sit and talk about myself for 20 minutes. I talked about the hurt I caused or might have caused and what I'd done wrong and what I was thinking and why I realized it was incorrect about this cis binary in my head. And I need to work on that. And I'm going to try to be more inclusive. And again, I apologized at the end. All right. So it's not that difficult to do, to acknowledge those things and then actually use them as a teaching moment for yourself. I'm like, this is how I screwed up and this is how I realized I was wrong. But yeah, this willingness to just extend forgiveness to people who've not asked, who've not acknowledged they've done anything wrong yet, is a real problem of, I guess, YouTube fandom in particular, what we're talking about here, but probably more generally as well.
Yeah, and then I really don't appreciate how like Jake did something wrong by making that comment. You are trying to, I wouldn't necessarily like defend yourself, but you're trying to explain to him like how what he did was wrong. So you made a comment that may or may not be necessarily completely politically correct. And instead of them sticking on the original problem, which
Yeah.
was the comment,
Yeah.
they turn around and try to make it about you doing something wrong and trying to attack you for what you said. And I don't like that. I don't like people who are reinforcing the status quo, but they're trying to use like woke terminology and all these woke concepts to do it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and when you talk about that and you talk about language appropriation, I mean, when I, well, we can get into a lot of things here, but yeah, even sort of like claiming other terms. I think woke now is so useful, though it's kind of gone definitely international because it's such a good term to use. But again, this is kind of a random, consciousness stream rather than a coherent series of thoughts. When I hear people like Sargon use terms like woke, he starts appropriating terms that come from generally the American Black community, because that's where a lot of the forefront of emerging popular culture is, with terms like, just eye roll things or things being fire or. I'm struggling for terms because I can't think about it. But any of these languages that end up getting appropriated and used by people who are against the actual concepts themselves. This is a whole big mess in my head that I need to spend more time thinking. So we're going to wind back to go to notions of, privilege. And I guess that's kind of ties into maybe why misogyny is so still widely accepted or shrugged off, is because it's done with people by people who have power, and the people who are the targets of it either become and like almost desensitized to it or participate in it or aren't in positions to make a change or to ask people to use different language when it comes to misogyny.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up power because within the Black community, there are so many Black men who feel like because they are Black, they're not able to hold privilege in other parts of their identity. But that's not true. You know, Black men still have male privilege, cishet straight men still have cishet straight privilege.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why the misogyny and the homophobia and transphobia that is present in the Black community, it largely, I don't want to say largely because I don't want to erase anybody's work, but it goes unchallenged for like the most part of the community because most of the community, you know, there's a lot of older folks. There's, again, a lot of Christian. There are Black conservatives who happen to vote liberal because they think Republicans are really racist. So it's like, um, you know, Black people as a community, we're not as progressive as some people would like to paint us to be. And you can really tell by the language that is used in a lot of these songs in the way that they describe women.
Yeah. Sorry, Kevin Logan is in the chat going, Christy, 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 over and over again, because that's Kevin all over. Hi, Kevin. How are
Hi,
you?
Kevin.
We're both saying hi to you. You made a really cogent point, and I got all distracted. It's just like being with a happy hour with Kevin. He manages to distract me, even when he's not on air with me. But yeah, you know, so there are times when, like, I'm thinking about with, you know, Kevin and we definitely use, I would say, you know, we use terms like bitch. I can't ever remember us using the word slut though. Cunt. Yeah, because the British use it to mean jerk.
Yeah.
A lot. Also not hoe, really. So I think when we use the terms on the show, and I've got a friend who's trying to eliminate the word, you know, bitch from his vocabulary, even as a verb, and I admire that, but it's also very useful as a term. And so there are, I think, part of the hard part about myself in my use of we could be termed misogynistic terms is that they are so pervasive. You know, you do have things like, you know, to bitch about something, which has a certain connotation that other words, you know, complain just doesn't have. And so it's like, I can, so for me, yeah, there are a whole bunch of, I guess, sex shaming terms that I just don't use and don't even think about using, like don't even enter into the vocabulary I work with. But ones that have been sort of widened out to not only refer to women, but can also basically be gender, pangender in terms of how they're applied. And I wrestle with that, you know, the usefulness of language, but then also feeding into the stereotype, or is it a shifting of language where we can maybe get away from the highly gendered thing. So I don't have clear or, you know, really defined thoughts on these things.
But yeah, I mean, I do agree with your point about the word bitch. It is, it's very versatile. And on one hand, even if somebody says the word to bitch, like you already said, it's rooted in misogyny. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it, like you already said. But personally, I take greater offense if a man were to call me a bitch compared to if I'm talking to a man and he happens to use the word bitch in conversation.
Right.
But I mean, like, that's for me personally. I feel like everybody else can have their own policy on the word. But I feel, yeah, what you already said, I feel like the solution is we have to move away from gendered language. So when someone does say bitch, we don't automatically think of women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that because, you know, the term gay, well, in old Christmas carols, you know, so gay and bright or whatever, we know means happy, but in our everyday language, it's completely taken on a different meaning. So I think it is, you know, possible over time if we stop I guess, then you get resting bitch face, though, which usually, I mean, I've heard it, seen it, sorry, I should say seen it on Twitter, occasionally applied to, well, RBF to men, but generally resting bitch face is associated with women, and calling women bitches. So, yeah, it's a pretty tall order to try to degender that term, actually, now that I think about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's coupled with like people telling women to smile so they look more pleasant. It's like, so what about a woman looking unpleasant is so unsatisfactory? Like, why can't a woman look mean or look upset?
Yeah, what is like what does that say about you that you feel uncomfortable with that? The viewer, not the person. She's just going about her day. She might be thinking about, whatever, her laundry list. So why, like, yes, yeah. And we have this, I guess, this cultural norm that women are meant to be polite and docile and serve, have you seen the, books about how to be a good wife from, like, the 1920s? And the things like, do your hair and makeup before he gets home and always be in a good mood when you greet your husband at the door, and all of this sort of, yeah, the also guys who tell women to, like you said, to smile. Yeah, give me a smile. Like, who the fuck are you? Would you tell that to another man? Would you say that to another guy at a bar? Guys looking down, you're like, hey, why don't you give me a smile? But
yeah,
it comes.
And they know what they're doing too.
Yeah, I guess it comes. It's that part of privilege, isn't it? Sort of walking around the world thinking that it's just, if you see a woman and she looks unhappy, you can tell her to smile, and now you've brightened her day. Ooh, little lady. I don't get it. So when it comes to hip hop, we talked a little bit. I mean, I was trying to. You talked about word replacement. Without hoe and bitches, I mean, there's a lot of words that rhyme. Like, there's a lot of lyrical structures that works within, and I can see why within music it would be, you say, a real challenge for an artist. I guess you could do something replacement like witches, but that's literally just standing in for the term, and it has the same kind of connotation, so it doesn't fix it. So do you think that it is are you aware of hip hop artists that are completely devoid of misogynistic language?
For the most part, I would say no. Because even now there are more women rappers that are coming to the forefront right now, and even some of them will still use misogynistic language, or they'll like kind of turn it around to where they're pushing that attitude on men, if that makes sense. Like, there's a rapper, Meg the Stallion. She talks a lot about, she uses language like pimping and hoes and using men as her pets, and it's like kind of a reverse power dynamic that she's trying to establish in her music. But I mean, even some of that language is still kind of problematic to me, but I love her personally.
Yeah. I think it's a pretty tall task to change an entire, because it's changing an entire culture. So it's not going to start with music, is it? I mean, those kind of changes aren't going to start by artists self-censoring, because it's in the culture. So really, when we talk about misogyny, it is the structural things or the unconscious things, like, guys thinking that they can tell women that they don't know to smile. That it's all of it comes down, eventually to that idea that do some men just refuse to see women as equals? It comes up again, like, really strangely recently. Kevin and I were doing a happy hour, and Stefan Molyneux was talking about, like, women's fertility. And on the same day, I had read a tweet. I think his name is Eric Weinstein. Yeah, with an I. EI, and he was talking about women who are, not going to give their parents the opportunity to know what it feels like to be a grandparent that ties their grandchild's shoe. And I don't get why these, like, older guys are so obsessed with women's fertility. This like seems like a really strange obsession that some, again, it comes back to, I guess, race, or something like that. But I don't spend my time thinking about old men and their Viagra, and how many women they're impregnating at their age, or that kind of, there's no parallels that I can think of about the way that we talk socially about men's reproduction, the way that all of society feels entitled to have an opinion on women's reproduction.
Yeah. And I feel like I think Toni Morrison pointed out this contradiction in one of her books, but it's weird how when it comes to young women, we're constantly policing their sexuality. You can't have sex, close your legs, you're a slut. And then women hit a certain age and all of a sudden it's the exact opposite. When are you going to get married? When are you going to give
Mm-hmm.
us children? All of a sudden you go from only being this object that has to be protected from male gaze and from penis, and then you immediately switch to like your only purpose in life is to have babies and to serve a man.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, how do we handle this? Like, how do you go from being a slut and a whore one day to being somebody's baby machine the next?
Right. I'm sorry. Being pure and virginal one day, and then squeezing out 7 or 8 kids immediately, and knowing how to do all of that on top of course, keeping your career, because if you don't, that wage gap is your fault. Yeah, it is strange the way that society really does discuss women's reproduction, in legislative bodies, with access to contraception, with the Hobby Lobby case, and having to get your employer's permission to get birth control. It's just, symptomatic of how much we come from a society where men viewed women as their property. And even though we have changed the laws and we've given women in law rights, and in theory they can access contraception and abortion services, which are legal medical things in the United States, but in practice there's still a whole culture and a lot of religious beliefs around organizing women's fertility and keeping it at zero until a certain point and then just have it explode.
Yeah. And then one thing that I was also thinking about a lot is like misogyny has a lot to do with control. And if we talk about like hip hop and like in the Black community, we also have to keep in mind that like Black men go out into the world and they get racially oppressed by white people. And I mean, just imagine how much frustration and anger that builds up. As a Black man in the 1930s, some white man can, like, I don't know, push you around or cuss you out, and you can't even look him in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
So Black men take that anger and they go home. Well, who is the people that he can take out that anger on? His wife, the kids. And I feel like that's where a lot of the acceptance of misogyny in the community comes from. Like, there is a general excuse of, well, they have to deal with racism. And there's a lot of more Black womenists and Black feminists who are speaking up to say, well, wait a minute, like,
Mm-hmm.
Black women also go through racism.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and on top of that, we go through misogyny. So, like, that's no longer an excuse to just treat us like crap. And it's really messed up to see how the power dynamic shifts so suddenly, and how people who were oppressed in one situation will turn around and be such a violent oppressor in another situation.
And getting back to religion does hold this idea of the man being sort of the ruler of his own house.
Right.
Right. So there is a place for, Black men who are heads of households to feel like this is where I have the power. This is where I can have some control and make some decisions and exercise my autonomy. But as you say, then that just pushes, it's a structural form of oppression. And it's not, well, it's exacerbated by racism. It's a bad dynamic to start with in whatever situation, but then there's the external racism pressures as well. And as you point out, then Black women and their Black kids are also experiencing this sort of double knock-on of the effects of racism.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's like what you said, like the home whenever we go out into the world, like we may face racism or any other nonsense, and we expect that. But we have an idea like once we come home, our home is our sanctuary. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And because for Black men, they're the head of household. So it's like their happiness is like prioritized compared to everyone else. So it sometimes creates an environment where like Black children can come home and they still feel like they're living in a fucked up environment.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think.
not just Black children, but also women too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that again traced right back to religion.
Yeah.
That's a fucked up power structure. That's you know all in all communities that have the sort of monotheistic traditions that go into basically the Bible based notion that men have magical powers by virtue of their status. That's all they need to do is just not be women, and be heterosexual and conform to the wider group, and then they're automatically at the top of that sort of chain. At least they have other people underneath them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and undermining that, to adopt a kind of egalitarianism. I mean, that's difficult enough, I think, in secular countries where you're just living with even when people who are, we know this, people who become atheists, they don't actually question a lot of the views about power structures that they had when they were in religion. They just go, oh, science just debunks religion, but men are still superior to women because we can run faster and we can lift heavier things. And like, no, like you gotta think about everything that religion, gave you to think about, and the frame it put you in. But in religious communities, I would say in the white evangelical community, it would be as difficult to try to get to a place where not people didn't see themselves in that fake equality in a marriage. Like, oh, my husband is the head, but I'm the neck that turns the head and gets it to go up. Like, no, like, can you just have two equal people without one being higher than the other? Can you find a way to negotiate between equals? And I think religion undermines that process a lot and is very harmful to women because of that, and families. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and we're seeing a reckoning with that because men are now like starting to earn either equal amount of money or like less than women. Like,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't there an article that recently came out that said like less than 50% of men make enough money to be able to afford to get married?
Oh, I didn't see that,
It was, I
but
might mess up the stat, but
no.
it was an article kind of like that where like millennial men just they can't afford it. Like millennial women were making our own money, like we aren't putting up with the same BS that our mothers and our
Mm-hmm.
grandmothers did.
Yeah.
And it's like without money to hold over women's heads, how will men still try to have control over us?
Yeah, that's Stefan Molyneux, I think, reminds me of that's reminded me of something he said, which is never a good thing when something reminds you of Stefan Molyneux. Um, but yeah, the fact that oh no, you know what it was? It was Peterson's enforced monogamy. That's what it was. That's what it reminded me of. Because what Peterson wants is to go back to the days when women couldn't just financially be independent and therefore not have to get married to survive. His thinking is if we just, took away birth control and took away women's economic liberation, then more women would have to hook up with men who maybe aren't ideal, but are, fine. And that would deal with this incel problem of young men not being able to have sex. Like, that
Oh my god.
that's that's basically his enforced monogamy. It's not so much about like laws or anything like that. It's just creating the conditions where women have to pair up with men. Not that men have to get better. Obviously
Yeah,
we're talking about cis heterosexual relationships because that's Peterson's worldview.
yeah.
But yeah, we just need to find a way to force women to be economically dependent on men, and then they can give sex in exchange, and then everything will just go back to the way it was and be good again.
Yeah, that's like a degree away from arranged marriages.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the only thing that you don't have there is the actual arrangement, but you have everything, else. Yeah.
Man, that's wild. Like to like making women slaves, domestic slaves again. Like that's the solution to the incel problem.
Well, according to Peterson, when women wear red lipstick at work, they're basically asking to be sexually harassed because they're giving sexual signals off to men. And so they're inviting that kind of attention just for wearing lipstick at work. So we're not talking about the most progressive thinker here. but
True.
but he's got a lot of fans. Yeah. And maybe there is a certain, I guess, if I was presented to the world and I was just taught I could say things like that line in Iron Man 3, the man says no. And then when I magically say the man says no, people just shut up and listen to what I say. Then yeah, maybe I'd be really reluctant to give that up too. But I'm on the other side of that, where when I'm making a good point and someone says, "Oh, the man says no," like that's not an argument. You've not
Right.
just, undermined my point. You've just tried to say, "Oh, my gender identity is superior to yours, therefore I win." Like, but people actually like use that thinking, which blows my mind.
Yeah. And it reminds me like when you're a kid and you're trying to like argue with your parents and your parents just go, "'Cause I say
Yeah,
so."
yeah.
As a kid, you're like, but that doesn't make any sense. Like, and it doesn't change when other people try to do it. It's just trying to dictate somebody. Like you're not teaching, you're not really showing them like, oh, this is why this is the way it is. It's like a cop out.
So, do you have any thoughts on like changes that you've made or seen people or make or have seen in the course of your lifetime to make you think that maybe misogyny is getting better than it was? Or is it just different from how it used to be in the past when we called, dames and broads? And if you were in an office setting, you could like have your behind tapped, or at least that was the presentation of society, in film.
I will say, I think it's similar to how racism has evolved, where it's like blatant, obvious acts of misogyny is frowned upon. For the most part, if a man just cold clocks a woman in the face in the middle of the street, most people will be like, "Oh my God, why would he do that? Call the police, blah, blah, blah."
Mm-hmm.
But more subtle forms of like, I don't know, you're in a crowded place and somebody gropes your butt, you know, people can see that happen, but no one really does anything because it's like, well, what can you do? So, I mean, it's still there. It's just a lot more um, subtle,
Yeah.
undercover.
I think I look at something like the Trump, basically any picture from a Trump administration event, and then you just see how he builds up this white men supremacy around him. And he's willing to have the occasional person who doesn't have a white cis, older men, Christian dudes, form, but they stand out because of the fact that they're so out of place amongst everything else being so homogeneous. And if you look at the Democratic Party, you can definitely see that. I mean, it certainly doesn't look like America, but it looks a lot closer to America than the Republican Party. And you get the entire like array of, women in power, men in power, older people, younger people. I mean, there's still a seniority system, but there's prominent people who are younger and prominent people who are older in the Democratic Party. And yeah, I think part of the disconnect for me is I don't move inside of a world or a culture that expects women to wear skirts that are just at their knee length. I mean, have you ever looked at the clothes that they put women in on Fox News?
Yeah, I mean,
It is scarily uniform.
yeah, well, with Fox News, it's a little bit different because like I have more experience with that when it comes to like church clothing or
Mm.
like, more formal like older black events where it's like ooh, like they don't want you to show your kneecaps. They don't want you to show your breastbone. You need to cover up those shoulders. Um,
Mm.
like that Ariana Grande incident at I forgot the famous singer and I should be embarrassed right now, who died and Ariana Grande performed at her funeral. She was wearing that dress that some people thought was skimpy and that priest or pastor kind of groped her a little bit.
Oh,
And
yes, that's
how,
right. Yes.
yeah, and everybody was talking shit about Ariana Grande wearing that dress. And it's like, okay, I don't care if she was butt naked.
Yeah.
He cannot touch her boob like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what people got upset about.
Yeah,
Her
but I
dress.
mean, like, that's the thing. Like people, I personally, I feel like dress codes like that are another form of control for women, and um, blaming. It's just a form of victim blaming. Like, and my mom also has that type of view, and it's very, very scary
Mm-hmm.
to deal with somebody who really thinks like, oh, if you have your titties out, then if a guy happens to harass you, like it's your fault. And I don't know, it's just, it's gross, it's disgusting. And
Yeah.
now I'm kind of rambling because it's
No,
just so
no.
gross.
Yeah, actually, one of the viewers in the chat, 250, wrote that when they were in the sixth form, a lecturer, they'd seen a boy slap a girl's ass, and the lecturer said he'd tell the girl to go stand up for herself in future.
What?
Yeah, not tell the boy to keep his hands to himself. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about.
Yeah, that's rape culture.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally how it happens in the smallest ways.
Yep. I mean, there is something to be said that, yes, she should feel comfortable reporting that stuff, but that's not the person he should talk to first. You know,
Yeah.
it should be, if this happens to you, there are ways that you can report this unacceptable behavior. And it's not to confront the person and maybe get in a violent altercation. It's you tell, like you note down the time, who was with you, what they saw, whatever else, and you come here and we'll deal with this. You should feel safe here. That's what people should be told, little girls.
Yeah, and then unfortunately, that attitude is pervasive everywhere
Mm-hmm.
with any situation dealing with sexual assault. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a celebrity, if it's a regular dude, the woman is always told, well, what could you have done to solve this? And it's like, but as a woman, it's not my issue to solve.
Yeah. Honestly, you hear about people getting mugged, and people don't go, "Oh, well, what did you deserve? Do deserve to get mugged? How do you get the attention of a mugger to do that to you?" We always only seem to have this special category of, "Oh, well, I have to find out what she was doing, or what the victim was doing. Did they in some way deserve it?" And
Hmm.
that's precisely what actually I think Me Too in my lifetime has produced the biggest change and the biggest conversation and the biggest power shift. It's not enough, but I do feel like since Me Too, there has been a power shift, especially in, I think, corporate America, about how those issues are talked about and dealt with. And also how companies, when they have those problems, their media strategy for dealing with them is very different now from what it would have been 10 years ago.
Yeah, thankfully so.
Yeah, but
And then, oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say it should have always been like we shouldn't have had to need to change it, but I can see the
Yeah,
change now. Yeah.
yeah. And then what's also even scarier is that it's not just people using like the clothes that you wear to try to blame you for what happened. It's also people's body types. It's if
Mm-hmm.
you happen to be curvier, that is an excuse enough for a man to act like he has no self control. And like, I feel like that's worse to me than blaming what somebody is wearing, because it's like, well, I can only do so much with my body. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like blaming women, and especially like with Black girls in the community, if we happen to develop early, then there are some people who will start blaming the little girl for the uh, attention that older men will give her, instead of recognizing like, no, those older dudes are pedophiles.
Mm-hmm.
Like recently, Billie Eilish, I think that's her name, recently turned 18. A whole bunch of dudes on Twitter were trying to celebrate, and it's like, first of all,
Yeah.
ew, you
Mm-hmm.
have no access to this girl. But second of all, what is it about our culture that celebrates youthfulness to the point where we're counting down when a woman turns of legal age?
Yeah, that's as you say, ew, gross. Because it is it almost like this sort of, yeah, like a stud mentality. Like she's not a person, she's just a body to have sex with. And that too, I think, comes back as we talked about the pervasiveness of how society has framed. Now, I don't want to say that men didn't participate in it and carry it forward, but like the society that we've inherited views women as these breeding machines, and
Yeah.
men see them as objects of their sexual pleasure. And again, cishet men in this case, or heterosexual men in anywhere, just men. I guess they don't have to be cis. They can be just heterosexual. They can be trans men too. Yeah, so I don't want to exclude the impact of culture, but to reduce, yeah, like that consistent dehumanization. She stops being a person and just becomes, ooh, here's a body that I can now legally have sex with.
Yeah, and it's messed up because there are quite a few women who internalize that too.
Mm-hmm.
They completely buy into the idea that that's their purpose in life, that that's their place. And it's real, real sad, especially when it's like everyday women who um, they may not have a whole lot to lose, but what little they do have can like destroy their ability to self sustain. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's messed up and it's sad because there are women in their 50s who look back and they realize like, oh, I wasted my life trying to be a wife and a mother, and that breaks my heart.
Yeah, and I'm sure people who want to be parents, that's great, but buying into something because you feel like that's what society wants and it's not necessarily what you want, that's not a great position to be in. Definitely
Right.
not. Yeah. And on that too, it also makes having that culture of misogyny makes it very difficult to have a positive view of women's sexuality and sexual pleasure, and enjoying like wearing things that make them look and feel good about themselves, without always having to mediate it between what are some men I don't even know going to think about me in this situation.
Oh God, Christy, like man, like a few years ago, I literally had that internal dialogue with how I personally dress because I just, for the most part, like I'm kind of shy to where like I don't necessarily like a lot of people staring at me, but at the same time, like I can't control it, so it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But back then when I was younger, like in high school, I used to like cover my body completely because I just did not want that type of attention.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted people to get to know me as a person instead of like focusing on my body. And after I learned a lot of this stuff, it's like, no, that's fucked up. Like, it's not my fault. It's not my responsibility.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I can do to like change it.
Yeah, but it takes years, and it takes having maybe been exposed to certain ideas, but then also to internalize those ideas and think about them and weigh them up. But your default in the culture is, you don't want to attract this attention, cover yourselves up, do all these things. It's this. You need to think about. The first thing you need to think about when you get dressed in the morning is how men in the world are going to think about you. That's what we teach women.
Oh yeah. And I
And
would argue
yeah,
not even just men, also women.
yeah,
Because, if you wear something that's a little bit too provocative, even women will be like, oh, well, yeah, she shouldn't have been wearing that. And it's like, what?
that's true. I was thinking more of the eyes thing, but in terms of the judgment, yeah, then society is not kind in that way to women who want to express themselves, and wear clothes that might make them look really really hot, and enjoy that and be proud of it. Yeah, that's it's something that it's like both encouraged, but then also very much punished in a way that men really can't relate. I think again, the thinking more here like cis, with patriarchal within that system. Men within patriarchy can't think about having to think about other people when they get dressed every day. Oh, no, that's not true actually, because Black men also have to think about their wardrobes and how they present people of color to police and to other officials as well. So I guess in that way, there is perhaps some empathy for thinking about regulating your body before moving into a public space.
Well, I mean, you're right, like on the principle where it is similar in that way, but I honestly don't think that that empathy translates for
No,
them
I don't think so
because
either. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like a lot of black dudes, they look at it as like they're being persecuted by racism, and I guess they compartmentalize that, and
Mm,
they're not able to see like how women are policed with clothes in a similar way.
mm.
You know, because even those same dudes who will get profiled because they wear a certain thing, they will turn around and start profiling a woman for wearing a certain thing.
Yeah, we get really mixed signals as women in the modern age. You know, we're supposed to be everything, right? We're supposed to be able to compete, you know, in a sexist world and get ahead. We're supposed to be able to, you know, we're supposed to do better in school and get our degrees and then, you know, get a job which will pay us less on over the course of our lifetimes. Thank guys. But we're also supposed to be, you know, sexually empowered and feel good about our bodies and ourselves and embrace who we are, but at the same time make sure that we conform and that we're not, you know, doing anything that would disrupt men's thought patterns in any way whatsoever. Yeah, it's like, again, it's all of these double binds that women find themselves in across various parts of their lives.
Yeah. And then I would say to go back to like misogyny and hip hop, it's really interesting because again with all these new women rappers that are coming out, we're starting to see a lot of the narratives being challenged and being shifted in the conversation. You know, how we were talking about slut shaming. Um, Again, a new rapper,
Mm-hmm.
Megan the Stallion. Um, she publicly had a breakup with one of her first boyfriends after becoming like famous, and she's now recently being pictured with another singer, Trey Songz, and there are so many people trying to call her a hoe because she's
What?
just publicly out having dates, and it's like, okay, so where's the correlation? Like,
Yeah.
what's the logic in that?
Yeah, she's just living her life. You
Yeah.
know, like,
But then I
be
guess it
happy for
makes
her.
people so uncomfortable.
Yeah. It is, yeah, and I think too when you know you talk about when you get more artists in a space and there's more opportunity to hear from people's perspectives, and obviously they don't want to talk about misogyny, you know, in every single one of their songs, but coming at it from a different angle or presenting it a different way. Um, but it's you know is uh, so I guess what I'm thinking about, I don't know if you've seen Bodied. It's on YouTube Premium, if which I got last year. Anyway, it's the rap battle film, and one of the main characters is a black woman rapper. And so there's like a guy who's from Korea. There's the white guy. There's the black guy who's sort of like the main character vis-a-vis the white guy, and then one of the supporting characters is a black woman. And what they end up doing in the film a lot is just flipping the whole racial taunts, or in this case, the sexist taunts, and kind of trying to turn them back on the user rather than. And I'm just so it sounds like a little bit like when you're talking about with the stallion, was it?
Yeah, Meg the Stallion.
Meg the Stallion, Ms. Stallion, I called her. How white am I? Um, but her talking about having guys as pets, that sounds quite provocative to me. And I'm wondering if you think that is that the direction it should go, or would you like to see it go, or would you like to see maybe just challenging the framework of the term, or do you even think it's the job of rappers to like have to deal with feminist critique? Is it just their job to make money and make music?
Well, I do think every rapper should have to be challenged by feminist critique and at least be able to think about, okay, like what is the possible implications of me saying what I'm saying in the way that I'm saying it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how I don't think that women rappers should attack it from a specific angle. I just like how there's so many different women who have their own ways of combating it. You know,
Ah, okay.
like Meg the Stallion, she's very she herself is not aggressive. It's her rap style and her flow and the way that she confronts misogyny herself is very, very aggressive. By her switching the gender roles but keeping the language the same, it makes men very uncomfortable. And I feel like what she's doing is like kind of making men feel what women have always felt
Mm,
listening to other rap songs.
hmm.
And I feel like that's a very valid way to attack it. There's other rappers, like for instance, another one of my favorites, Rico Nasty. She does it in a completely different way where it's way more uplifting and empowering of women in general. And I feel like that's also another valid way to do it.
Mm.
So, I mean, I just, representation is important, and having all these different perspectives attacking this issue from all different sides, I feel like is the most powerful way to go about it.
Well, that seems eminently sensible to me. You've convinced me. Yeah. Um, I don't want to keep you too long. I think I said I'd keep it to about an hour, and we're getting close onto that. But before we did wrap it up, I wanted to see if there was anything else that you wanted to bring up, or a thought that you had earlier. Of course, I put the word thoughts on thought in. Maybe, yeah, if you want to talk about the word thought at all. That's another one that has been kind of appropriated. And yeah, actually, well, on a completely different angle, I don't even know if I want to bring this up because I'm thinking about doing. I know I want to do a video on it, but it's the concept of digital blackface.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a whole topic.
Now maybe it's too much for now, but if I can give my since I brought it up now, I'm going to give my 30-second thing. I guess probably about this time I started getting back into hip hop and watching a lot of hip hop reaction channels like Script Work and Screwface and No Lie Shack, my regulars. I became so one of the things I noticed that I liked about the videos is that they were so over the top, and there was a lot of exaggeration, and that comes across really well in a YouTube screen because it's very small, and so it creates a lot of movement and stuff. But then I think I was watching a choreographer who was teaching the dance from This Is America, and she talked about one of the scenes when they walk around him in a circle. I don't know if you remember that scene, but there's like some school kids that are sort of walking around him in a circle. And she said, now when you come into the scene, she told the students, I want you to do the walk that you do when you're walking into the party when your favorite song has been put on. She's like, because, we're Black people, we tend to be pretty exaggerate, like we really go big on this kind of stuff and kind of exaggerate. She's like, I want to see you like dancing, like walking out to dance to your best music, your favorite song. And I realized that that's very much part of the culture when I reflected on it. Again, being in a white bubble, I didn't think about these things a lot growing up. So like that was a new thought to me. And I realized also when I looked at my Twitter GIFs that a disproportionate number of them have Black people on their front. And it's like the eye roll, it's the smack my head, it's the oh no, all these sort of like little giphy things. And I went, I'm just going to pick white women when I like that's I think that for me, when I want to represent an emotion, I think I'm best off picking a white guy or a white woman. Or if it's someone, the guy who did the song Why You Always Lying, well, I'll credit him because that's his song. But otherwise, I don't really feel comfortable just like taking an exaggerated expression from a Black athlete to represent how I feel. And that's just where I landed on it. And so for months, I've been doing that anyway, and I've been perfectly happy. And then another friend came over and said, have you heard of this thing of digital blackface? I don't know if that it exists. And like, I know, I've never heard of it. He said, it's when you use GIFs of, Black people. And I'm like, actually, I kind of already do that. And I didn't know it had a name, but I don't do that because I think it's basically another form of white people stealing Black people's culture, because there's been a lot of that in America. And to be fair, this person wasn't from the States, so they didn't have the same framework I did. But yeah, I've actually been thinking for weeks now about doing a longer video on digital blackface and why it makes me feel uncomfortable and why I tend to avoid it. But I didn't do it because I heard of the term. I came to that decision on my own. That was way longer than 30 seconds. I am so sorry.
No, you're good.
But if you have any like thoughts or reactions to my process, or if you thought I was naive or whatever, yes, please let me know.
Yeah, I don't blame you for being uncomfortable with it. I remember when I was first introduced to that term, and at first I was taken aback because it's like, well, it's a GIF. Like, why would race even come into play? But from how I learned it, it's much more than just using GIFs or GIFs, however you pronounce it,
Mhm.
of Black people. It's like using African American vernacular English. It's, how there are certain people who will get a stock photo of a Black person and put that as their profile picture and
Oh,
pretend to be a Black person online. And that to me is a lot more concerning,
yeah.
uh, because social media is a space where minorities and just marginalized groups can come together and interact with each other and have their voices heard. So for people to do that, it's very, insensitive and kind of callous. But I mean, the using certain GIFs, that concerns me less than like how there are so many people who will use AAVE and not even think twice about it. You know what I mean?
What's AAVE? Sorry, I have no idea what that is.
Oh, that's cool. It's like African American vernacular English.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's certain terms like, oh, it's lit or fam or
Right, got it.
yeah.
I didn't know. No, I didn't know that the AAVE, like that was a term I heard before. So every day's a school day. Thank you for that. Yeah. Now if I see it on Twitter, I'll know what it means. But yeah, I think that was a kind of like the thing I was talking about before when people like Sargon, try to pick up these terms and use them. I'm like, if you're such a classical English liberal, why don't you just use words from England and don't take other people's cultures' words if you're so purist, in my
Right?
opinion.
I mean, it's cool when a white person uses it, but when a Black person uses it, all of a sudden they're
Right.
too stupid to speak proper English.
Yeah. For me, I guess, I can, like I was saying about how Black culture in America, especially, is so at the fore of what is going to be cool in 2 years' time to white people. Like, and I don't know, like, so, when people are using, terms like fam and the ones that you're saying, like, I, that I see that too as an extension. And then I also cringe when I look at myself because, like I was saying, the word woke is so useful, so helpful to describe things. But so I'm kind of caught up in that one layer away is I don't always know where things are coming from culturally. But I think also you're talking about appropriating it, but also maybe using it, like you said, in ways that perpetuate like racist stereotypes. Is that also what I'm getting from you, or did I misunderstand?
No, that's right. To use it to perpetuate stereotypes, but then to also claim certain words as their own, I also think that is problematic. I pointed out a while ago how like Donald Trump Jr. said something's lit or something like that, and
Oh,
it's like, you're a white supremacist. Why would you even talk like us?
yeah.
Like, that's off-putting. But I think the most extreme effect of this digital blackface is what is called either nigger fishing or
Ooh.
black fishing, where you have these Instagram influencers. They will purposefully get a foundation shade that is way too dark, and they will manipulate their makeup to where they look like a racially ambiguous Black woman.
My eyes are like saucers right now. What?
Yeah,
Whoa. No,
yeah,
yeah, no, that would definitely be called digital blackface. Like you said, the extremes of like putting up somebody's picture, a Black person's picture, and LARPing, almost as it were, of someone from a background that you're not, or doing that kind of thing. I'm just like, does not compute. My brain is just shutting down over that. And,
yeah.
oh,
And I mean, like, it has like other effects that people don't really think about, where it's like, makeup has only recently gotten so inclusive to where women my shade or darker can actually find foundation to wear. Like, it was Fenty Beauty who revolutionized the whole makeup industry to include darker skinned women. So now that we're included and we see white women trying to mimic looking like a Black woman, it's like, well, you're taking away the products that were designed specifically for us.
mm-hmm. It's like, can you not have anything just for yourselves? Just so like, can you just like, can you? No, I get it. Like white people, just leave this alone. Like just one thing. Like don't say the N-word and leave our foundation alone. Like that's two things. That's all. Like that's not a lot to ask for. I don't understand people. I don't understand white entitlement.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the most recent Kim Kardashian photo.
Mm-mm.
A lot of people said that she looked like she was trying to mimic a black woman. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. I don't keep up on her stuff. I might be able to pull it up if you want me to do a search on the Googles.
You don't really have to. I mean,
Okay.
other people were outraged saying that she was trying to mimic a black woman. For me personally, I did not see it. I
Okay.
think black women are much more than our skin tone or having big lips. And that's what I saw from Kim. She was definitely darker, a lot darker than her original skin color.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't see her as a black woman, but I do understand how she will purposely tan herself as dark as possible so that she can match her biracial children.
Mm.
And that's kind of concerning.
Yeah. So actually, I managed to get the pic up. I think can I screen share with you? I think so. Yeah, screen share. Nope, not that one. This one. So, all right, I'll move you off. That's the picture you were talking about.
Oh no.
Oh, okay.
Wait, scroll down the page. They might have like the magazine cover. But that's her original or close to her original complexion in that first photo.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, she looks like to me like Diana Ross. Like that's the kind of
With
hair.
the hair especially.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. I see that now. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, she is very dark.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Rachel, what was her name? Dole something or other?
Dolezal?
Dolezal, yeah. I mean, she got dragged all over the internet. And for impersonation, obviously. But is blackfishing, is this a relatively new term?
I think it is. Yeah. Because I mean, again, the foundations for us to use is relatively recent. Like I would say it's only been happening in the last 5 years or so, maybe more. Because again, people only started doing this when it was cool to be black,
Do you
or
think,
when black women aesthetically became trendy.
I'm going to say, I think it's all about Queen Bey. I think everyone wants to be Beyonce now. And she's so, oh, of course, who wouldn't want to be? Yeah, but yeah, I mean, she's like such a powerhouse of it culturally, and when when it comes to, I mean, talk about a strong, confident, powerful. I mean, everything queen. I mean, there's a reason why they call her queen. She's just got that poise and stature. Yeah, and hugely influential. But yeah, that's it's a very, very wow. Again, new things in my life that I wasn't aware of until now. This is why I love talking with you. You're so interesting, and we have such a good chat. So, wow. Okay. Yes. So we'll look that up. I can stop screen sharing now. So yeah, that's lots of things we need to fix about the world. I think is pretty much the main theme of this call, and not easily fixed either. So sadly,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the last few things that I would say on misogyny in hip hop is it's so there's like a lot of different layers to it. Like there's also colorism involved, and how lighter skinned women are prioritized over darker skinned women. And there's also the enforcement of white beauty standards that are placed on black women within the community. And that also plays a big part. How well, I don't know if you have too much time, but I mean, we can go over the transformation of the rapper Little Kim.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
Okay, so like to start off, you should probably like search for a picture of Little Kim in the 90s to see how she looks, and then compare that to how she looks now. And it's apparent that like this woman, she's been put through the ringer emotionally. There's stories about when she used to date Biggie Smalls, like he would just kind of treat her as like a sexual object and not really treat her as a serious contention for marriage for him. And people say like that kind of broke her down emotionally and kind of inspired the change of look that she has now.
Okay, so I think I've got, you can confirm this for me. While you've been talking, I've been Googling. So do that bit, and then you'll be able to see it. You'll be able to see my screen when I can speak English, that is. So I take it this is her older pictures? That's from earlier?
The one where she's in like the animal print bikini.
This one? Ah. Okay.
Yeah, that's how she used to look.
Right.
So you see how like her complexion is darker, but she's still a gorgeous woman.
Yeah, she looks incredibly hot and having a good time. And yeah, looks like she's out having a good time. That's what I'll say. All right, so here are the pictures. I've got some from 2019. You want to pick one as representative?
Any of them will do.
Oh, okay. Here we go. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's definitely, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof. So what happens like with this? Just like I don't even know how these. It's all plastic surgery, or
Yeah, I mean, she did get some plastic surgery. And I would say it also looks like skin bleaching because darker skinned women are made to feel undesirable and ugly, even though they're not. And I
yeah,
think like she internalized a lot of that and decided to lighten her skin
that's
and get plastic surgery and stuff.
heartbreaking. I mean, I can't
Yeah.
imagine the agony of that. And that's so messed up that we live in a culture where women torture themselves, literally, and have to pay for it in order to achieve a kind of beauty standard. As a oh, this is making me angry. How messed up this is.
Yeah. And you see how like there's a lot of black men, well, not just the men, but mainly the men who contribute to this attitude to make black women feel like they're inadequate unless they look more racially ambiguous. It's pretty disgusting.
Black women, have it so. I mean, I'm thinking of like the drunk history where there was a story of Harriet Tubman, but it wasn't. It was the one where she went around. She like burned all the plantations. She organized an espionage tactical maneuver, and she led it and burned down a bunch of plantations and like rescued 150 people. And afterwards, the woman who was telling the story, who was black, she's like, "Black people have had it so rough," and I just, like she just like felt overwhelmed in that moment. I mean, she was kind of laughing because it was a comedy show, but I think it had hit her about just like the struggles that like she had to go through, after she had been freed from being a slave. She was still doing this kind of stuff. And when you're describing this, for me, the moment of like how difficult psychologically it is being a black woman in America is, I think, again, with living in a white bubble, I can see things and abstractly I understand they're tough. But as we're sitting here and you're talking about them and explaining things to me, there's a lot more of an empathy connection with just the day-to-day grind. So, yeah, America sucks in that way, big time. For a country that has such great ideals, it really has a power structure and a power system that keeps people trapped in it and keeps them down while telling them the whole time that they're living in the greatest country in the world.
Yeah, which is obviously not true, but I mean, ideology, right?
Yeah, I don't know that there's any greatest countries in the world because all countries in the world have problems, but the extent to which so many as a parts of white America, just take that as read. Woohoo, we just live in the greatest country in the world, and yeah, we have our problems, but it's like, no, actually, you really need to look at it. Saying you live in the greatest country in the world just hides all the problems. It doesn't solve them.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, I'm depressed now.
Then
But
I wouldn't want to depress you further. But I mean, at how people are trying to treat Lizzo now, and how her body and being a Black woman plays a huge part in that.
yeah, go on. I mean, I don't know if you had, yeah.
I don't know if you've been keeping up with the whole Lizzo controversy that has been going on for the past like 6 to 8 weeks.
I have not. So should I look this up here? 1Z? Z?
Or two Z's?
Two Z's?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so tell me about this.
Yeah, so as you can see, you know, Lizzo is a plus size, fat Black woman. Um, she's an incredible singer and rapper. Um, and musically speaking, like celebrities have always, well, I won't say have always, but she's always been talented. Prince was her mentor
Oh, wow.
before he died.
Mm-hmm.
So and she has been featured on one of his albums, and she is acclaimed when it comes to her music. And she recently hit mainstream like earlier this year, I believe. And at first, everybody was applauding her for, you know, being bigger and being a Black woman. But I think it was ever since her Postmates scandal, which wasn't really a scandal, but you know, people have been just publicly shitting on her. And especially recently, after she showed up to a Lakers game with a t-shirt dress and it was cut out in the back so you can see her bare. Ever since, people have just been, you know, making all these types of fat jokes and just publicly degrading her. And it's really, there's also been racial attacks saying that because she makes more pop music, that she's making music for white people. There's been people who called her a mammy, which is like a really disgusting racial term for fat Black women. And yeah, it's because people are not used to seeing a woman like Lizzo in the hip hop, you know, pop arena, you know, and she's facing all this criticism for literally just being who she is, and it's fucked up.
Yeah, that, yeah. Again, you know, she's living her life, doing her thing, being talented. You know, doing her talent. And yeah, that's sort of like initial, oh, you're great. But then after a certain time, people just feel like they can start tearing you down. God, like modernity, yes, that's also, yeah, unhappy. I don't know how to react. I don't know. I don't have good words to describe the emotional turmoil that the story that you're telling me makes me feel.
Well, I mean, as a fat Black woman, I feel a whole lot of things. Because it's just like Lizzo, people say that Lizzo does too much by like what she wears or how she acts, but it's like, no, she's just like any other woman. She's just in a bigger body. Like the things that she does, the way that she dresses, how she'll post provocative sexual pictures that are still tasteful considering her size. Like skinnier women, they do the same thing,
All
if
the
not
time.
more.
Yeah.
And the way that people react to Lizzo and her sexuality and being proud of her body, you know, I know that that has to play into how they view other, not just fat women, but also fat Black women. You know, like sometimes I want to wear short shorts, you know, sometimes I want to serve some cake to the people around, you know, bless them with some of these, you know, voluptuous titties. But, you know, it's just gross how people hate it and they
Yeah.
just hate her.
Everyone also thinks that their opinion is worth saying out loud, which I don't
Yeah.
understand. Like, really.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, on par with the sort of like, oh, I wouldn't have sex with her. Like, nobody asked you. Nobody cares who you have
Right.
sex with. Shut your mouth. Like, I don't want to be thinking about your whatever you know. Like, yeah, just sort of like this freeness of of saying horrible things that come into your mind and then posting them or adding the person. Like,
Yeah. Like the dudes, I would never have sex with Lizzo. She's too fat. Coming from a fat, ugly dude who never had a chance to begin with.
yeah. And that's the worst kind of. Yes, I think when you're reduced to saying like, "Oh, I wouldn't have sex with him or her," like you literally have nothing else. You have nothing of value to say. Like if that's what you're like coming out with, none of your like. Don't you have better opinions? Don't you have something interesting to say with the brain that's in your head, or are you just gonna like blurt that out? Yeah, people are trash. Oh, it's so difficult to be a progressive when you want the world to be what you want people to be what they can be, but then you have to deal with what people are, which is always way more disappointing. By the way, 250 in the chat asked about the slavery. I think he was asking about the term mammy, and is it linked to slavery like Uncle Tom phrase? Is that where the mammy thing comes from?
Yes. I haven't done exhaustive research into it, but from what I understand, the black women who used to be used as the caretakers for like the small children in the family, because back then during slavery and all of that, black women would get pregnant. The slave masters would force the slaves to, have sex. The black woman would get pregnant. She would have her kids. The kids would be taken away from her to either be sold or to, work in different fields or whatever. But she would still have breast milk. Her body would still be able to breastfeed. So the slave masters would have their white children suckle from the black woman's breasts. And that black woman who would be like the caretaker for all the white people's children, she would be known as like a mammy because she would tend to be, a bigger black woman.
Right. So it's all kind of tied up with. I guess I was thinking too of that's precisely the sort of trope they went for in Gone with the Wind, right? With the actress who played Scarlett O'Hara's, I guess, yeah, was slave, right? That sort of, she was a bigger woman. She was there. She's cared about Scarlett O'Hara, and her life was kind of dedicated to that, and that was the role that that person, that sort of form of would play in the story.
Yeah.
Do you know? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's I'm trying to see if what other people are saying in the chat. Counterfeit culture and social capital from hyperreal spectacle. I don't know what that's related to. The person said, oh, the comment about the sixth form teacher. It was also said the lecturer used to work at the BBC. Definitely a rape culture there. Yep. But I think that's about it. That was the last question that I see in the chat. So, well, what have you got going on for the rest of your day?
The rest of today, well, thankfully, it's like my off day.
Yay.
And thank God, because I've been like low key sick lately. Like, I don't know if you like virtually sent your stomach virus to me, Chrissy, but
no.
my stomach has just been in shambles.
Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that. Of course, the day that you have off is the day it finally comes up, right? It really starts to interfere with your life. When you start to relax, that's when you get sick.
Right, especially a couple of days before Christmas with all this
food. No, no. I hope you feel better on that. If you're going to hopefully rest today, are you going to be watching anything, binging anything?
I might catch up on some anime.
Oh,
really? Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I didn't realize you were an anime fan. Oh no.
Oh wait, let me explain. Because I know on Twitter, the anime bots are like dickheads, and they just give anime a bad name. But
that's true. But
I do really like certain series, and I watch them like kind of like a cartoon, like an adult cartoon, and the themes that they go over in anime is really interesting. They talk about like the strength of friendships and how that's important to people, and like discovering who you are and all this character development. So like some of them is like way better than what's available on American TV.
I think a good story, you can get into a lot of different genres if there's a good story behind it.
Yeah.
That's really what it takes. Like it can be a video game with a great story, or anime, or a TV show. But if it's got a compelling story, yeah, people will fall into that. So, yeah, that's good. Glad you enjoy that. I tried. Well, no, I don't really try anime. I tried Eon Flux, was it? But I made the mistake of like watching it at night when I was tired anyway, and I think I just fell asleep. So, but yes. So you're gonna have an anime day, or at
Yeah,
least for a little bit.
yeah, just to probably like finish up this series that I'm on. Probably keep writing because I'm almost done with this particular short story and I want to get it done before the
Excellent.
new year.
Ah, cool. Are you going to publish it somewhere, or are you going to shop it around, or are you going to read it out on your YouTube channel? What will you be doing with it?
Uh, I was thinking about putting it on Medium, but probably not. Probably just put it on my blog, you know?
Okay. Well, if people want to know about that, the work in there, okay, they can follow you at High Critique Paul on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to
Yeah.
know when that's going to come out, people might be interested. So they can go check you out on Twitter. Anything on coming up on your channel? Anything you put up lately that you want to promote before we wrap it up?
Yeah. A couple of days ago, um, recently had a live stream, a Patreon live stream, um, where we talked a lot about like, should when married women have like a secret stash account, just in case things go bad. And we ended up talking about a lot of different stuff, politics, misogyny in general. Talked a little bit about the YouTube walkout and things like that. Uh,
Hmm. Did you do the YouTube walkout?
okay, so my opinion is a little controversial.
Okay.
Um, so, in theory, I agree with the YouTube walkout. Like, I understand what is trying to be accomplished and I support that. However, I personally do not feel like it was executed in a way to even come close to accomplishing that. But I mean, I kept all of that to myself mainly. I
Are,
personally still watched YouTube during the strike, but I mean, I support it, but it's just like I don't think it would be effective enough in the way that they did it. I also feel like it was very exclusive only to like the white liberal part of YouTube. And it's like YouTube has so many different communities.
hmm.
We would have to find solidarity like with all of these different people. And that didn't come close to happening. So,
I think those are all valid points. I'm not. I mean, I didn't upload. I didn't know we weren't supposed to watch. I thought it was just an upload thing. Oops. Because I watched
oh,
YouTube. No, I mean, I just wasn't really paying attention that much to it. I mean, I didn't post anything during it, but I kind of had the same thing. Like, I don't think strikes on YouTube make a whole lot of impact on YouTube when I think it's like 300 hours of video are uploaded every minute. So, and you've actually made even more better, or more better. You've got extended, critiques that I hadn't thought about again because I was more like, okay, there's this thing, don't post on these days. But I guess it didn't hurt anything, so I participated and was kind of happy to go. Yay, we should support these things. But I think you're right in terms of actually leveraging power, economic power in a way that would make YouTube take notice. I don't think creator strikes are really going to do anything. Which is why when people are like, "Oh, we should do this every month," I'm like, "No, I'm not doing this every month. We should do this every quarter."
yeah.
Like, no, I did it for 3
Yeah.
days, but I'm not going to be doing this again. Not because I don't believe in the cause. I just don't think the tactics are effective. So yeah, I don't actually think. Well, I mean, if your viewpoint is controversial, then apparently so is mine.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I think if this became an annual thing to where we can like pump out videos like well before the date, and it can circulate around to different parts of YouTube, and it becomes an annual thing. I think eventually it can build up to where it is making a big difference and we are
Hmm.
shutting down the website. But I mean, other than something like that, like I just
Yeah.
don't really, I think it's more performative than anything
Mm.
else.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you too much. I have a question for you. Do you, from Too Fit again, do you watch My Hero Academy? Is that an anime series?
Yeah, My Hero Academia. I'm
Oh, okay.
actually about to start it. I'm a couple of episodes away from finishing Assassination Classroom. But once I finish that, then I'm going to get started on My Hero Academia.
So there you go. There's your answer. Yeah, so I'm going to let you get on then with the rest of your night. This, again, I love speaking with you, and I'm sad that I don't get to do it more often because you're like one of the coolest people I know on YouTube.
Aww.
Yeah, I really enjoy talking to you and getting your perspective on things, and I learned so much when we talk as well. So I find that exciting. That's like, my geek. Like, oh, this is information that's useful and good, and so thank you for that. Yeah, so I guess I will. People can go and follow you on Twitter. They can check out your channel that's linked in the description box below. And I think all that's left to be said then is now to figure out how to stop sharing the screen and turn off the various things on YouTube and OBS to end this stream. So, do you want to say goodbye to the peoples?
Yeah. Well, first, I want to say thank you,
Oh,
Christy.
aw.
All those kind words. Like, YouTube is so incredible for me because I'm meeting people that, are super educated and they're just so wise in the topics that they talk about. And to have people that I greatly admire to say that I inspire them or they learn from me, that's like the best compliment I could ever receive.
Aw.
Like,
I'm
that,
hugging you.
yeah, a virtual hug.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like super heartwarming. And, that's the whole reason why I put in the work that I do for my channel. So thank you for that. Um, I want to thank people for, listening, watching. If you like my perspective or what I have to say, you can always follow me on Twitter, YouTube. Then you can also check out my blog or my Patreon for more content. Then I'd like to wish everybody a happy holidays, a Merry Christmas if you celebrate, Happy New Year's to everyone around. And sorry, my voice is getting scratchy.
Mine too. I'm with you.
Yeah. And then I will be uploading more in February. I took like a little break. So if the YouTube strike was just to not upload, then I was in accordance to it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I will be uploading my next video in February. And then other than that, I want to wish the good people, happy wishes, take care of yourselves during the holiday season, try to be happy, and let's make it to 2020.
Yes, let's make it through 2020, especially
Yes.
through November of 2020.
Oh, God.
Yes. All right. So, yes, goodbye from both of us. Bye, everyone.
Bye.